Mayday, Mayday, this is Deep Explorer Submersible. We have critical hull breach at 400 feet, 50 souls on board, oxygen failing fast. Anyone out there, please respond. The distress call crackled through the USS Blackwater's communication array, sending shockwaves through the control room. Alarms immediately began blaring as the crew scrambled to emergency stations. All stop! Captain Victor Blackstone barked. Get me a location on that transmission. Lieutenant Miranda Coleman stood frozen at her sonar station, her headphones pressed tight against her ears. While chaos erupted around her, she could hear something the others couldn't. The desperate sound of 50 people about to die.
Unfit for
But nobody was listening to her.
But when 50
They never
civilians
did.
were trapped 400 feet below with failing oxygen, the woman they mocked became their only hope of survival. Welcome to Quiet Tales Studio. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage beneath the waves, tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories of overlooked heroes deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us share these powerful tales with the world. 12 hours earlier, Lieutenant Miranda Coleman had been the joke of the submarine. She sat alone in the USS Blackwater's mess hall, methodically eating her breakfast, while the conversation at the next table grew louder and more pointed. The jokes were always about her hearing, always about how she was too sensitive for military service. "I swear Coleman can hear a fish fart from 20 miles away," Commander Rex Hawthorne said, causing the table to erupt in laughter. Yesterday, she claimed she could identify individual dolphins by their echolocation patterns. Lieutenant Cole Bennett, barely 2 years out of the Naval Academy but already convinced of his own expertise, leaned forward conspiratorially. "My instructor at sonar school said women get too emotionally attached to sounds. They start hearing things that aren't there." Chief Petty Officer Max Torres, a 20-year veteran with more underwater hours than the rest of them combined, shook his head. "Coleman's got good ears, I'll give her that. But good ears don't win wars. Technology does." Miranda kept eating, her expression neutral. She'd learned long ago that defending herself only made the mockery worse, but she listened to everything. The conversation, the ambient sounds of the submarine, the subtle vibrations that told her exactly where they were and what condition their vessel was in. What they didn't know was that her too sensitive hearing had been tested and measured by naval acoustic specialists. What they called a weakness, the specialists had called a gift that occurred in less than 1% of the population. Perfect pitch combined with extraordinary frequency discrimination and sound localization abilities. But the specialists' reports were classified. Her shipmates only saw a quiet woman who asked too many questions about sounds they couldn't hear. Captain Victor Blackstone entered the mess hall, his presence immediately commanding attention. At 52, he was old-school Navy through and through, a man who trusted instruments over instincts and experience over intuition. "Coleman," he called out, his voice carrying the authority of absolute command. "Report to sonar station. We're conducting acoustic mapping exercises in Sector 7. "Yes, sir," Miranda replied, rising from her barely touched breakfast. As she passed Hawthorne's table, she heard him mutter under his breath, "Probably going to claim she can hear mermaids singing." The laughter followed her out of the mess hall. The sonar room of the USS Blackwater was a cramped space filled with sophisticated electronic equipment. Banks of screens displayed everything from ocean temperature to biological activity. The submarine's most advanced acoustic systems were designed to detect enemy vessels, underwater obstacles, and changes in ocean conditions. Miranda took her position at the auxiliary sonar station, never the primary one, always backup. Commander Hawthorne manned the main console, his confidence radiating as he ran through the standard detection protocols. "Beginning acoustic sweep of Sector 7, Hawthorne announced into his headset. "All systems nominal, ocean conditions optimal for sonar operations." The electronic displays showed a routine picture: open ocean, normal temperature gradients, standard background noise levels. Everything the computers and instruments expected to see, but Miranda heard something different. She adjusted her headphones and closed her eyes, filtering out the electronic noise to focus on the actual sounds of the ocean. There, a pattern that didn't match the ambient ocean acoustics. Something subtle, almost masked by the natural sounds of marine life. "Commander," she said quietly, I'm picking up irregular acoustic signatures bearing 270 degrees. Hawthorne glanced at his primary display. Negative, Coleman. All systems show clear water in that sector. Sir, I think there might be a distressed vessel. Coleman. Captain Blackstone's voice cut through the sonar room like a blade. Are you questioning Commander Hawthorne's readings? Miranda felt every eye in the room turn toward her. The familiar weight of being dismissed, of being wrong even when she knew she was right. No, sir. The instruments show clear ocean, Lieutenant. Unless you're suggesting our $1 million sonar array is malfunctioning. She could hear it clearly now. The subtle distress patterns, the irregular mechanical sounds that indicated a vessel in trouble. But the electronic systems registered nothing. That evening, while most of the crew was asleep, Miranda sat in the submarine's small technical library with her personal laptop and a set of high-quality headphones. She downloaded the acoustic data from their patrol and was running it through specialized sound analysis software. The official sonar logs showed nothing unusual, exactly what the instruments had reported during their exercise. But Miranda wasn't looking at the electronic interpretation of the sounds. She was listening to the raw audio itself. She isolated the frequency ranges that had caught her attention during the patrol, filtering out the background ocean noise and biological sounds. What remained was subtle but unmistakable, mechanical sounds that didn't belong to any known marine life. More concerning were the patterns. The sounds weren't random. They followed a rhythm that suggested deliberate activity. And they were coming from an area that the charts showed as empty ocean. Miranda cross-referenced the acoustic signatures with a database of known vessel engine patterns. What she found made her blood run cold. The sound profile matched that of a civilian research submersible, the kind used for deep-sea exploration and scientific research. But according to all official traffic reports, no civilian vessels were supposed to be operating in that area. She ran the analysis again, double-checking her work. The results were consistent. There was a submersible out there, operating in an area where it shouldn't be, and it was showing signs of mechanical distress. Miranda sat back in her chair, processing the implications. She could report her findings, but she knew what would happen. Hawthorne would dismiss them. Blackstone would question her judgment. The instruments hadn't detected anything, so officially, nothing was there. But people could be in danger. She was still wrestling with the decision when the emergency klaxon began to sound throughout the submarine, jolting her from her analysis. No, sir, she said quietly. Must have been marine life. Hawthorne smirked. Probably whales gossiping. Coleman's always hearing conversations down there. The exercise continued for another hour. Miranda dutifully logged the official readings while privately noting the acoustic anomalies that only she seemed to detect. Patterns that suggested human activity where the instruments showed empty ocean. As they completed the exercise and began heading toward their next patrol coordinates, Miranda made a decision that would change everything. She quietly activated the submarine's passive listening array, a system designed to record ambient ocean sounds for later analysis. If there was something out there, something the instruments couldn't detect, she was going to find it. General quarters! General quarters! All hands to emergency stations! Miranda ran through the corridors of the USS Blackwater as the submarine's crew responded to the emergency alert. The announcement that followed made her heart race. Mayday! Mayday! This is Deep Explorer Submersible. We have critical hull breach at 400 feet, 50 souls on board, oxygen failing fast. Anyone out there, please respond. She reached the sonar room just as Captain Blackstone was demanding a location fix on the distress call. All available systems, give me a bearing on that transmission, Blackstone ordered. Commander Hawthorne was frantically working the primary sonar array. Sir, the transmission is breaking up. Signal strength indicates they're close, but I can't get a precise location. How close? Blackstone demanded. Within 10 nautical miles, but the exact coordinates. Hawthorne's voice trailed off as he struggled with the equipment. The acoustic conditions are making it difficult to triangulate. Miranda took her position at the auxiliary station, her hands moving instinctively to adjust the settings. The moment she put on her headphones, she could hear them. 50 people in desperate trouble, their vessel dying around them. Sir, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, I can hear them. Blackstone turned toward her, his expression skeptical. "Can you get us coordinates, Coleman?" Miranda concentrated, using her exceptional hearing to isolate the sounds of the distressed submersible from the ocean's background noise. She could hear the vessel's failing systems, the irregular hull stress patterns, even the subtle changes in the engine noise that indicated exactly how much power they had left. Bearing 271 degrees, range 8.7 nautical miles, depth approximately 400 feet, she reported with confidence. Hawthorne checked his instruments. "Sir, I'm not getting a solid contact of those coordinates." "Are you certain, Coleman?" Blackstone asked, his tone suggesting he wasn't prepared to bet 50 lives on her hearing alone. Miranda removed her headphones and looked directly at the captain. "Sir, I ran acoustic analysis on this area yesterday during our exercise. There was a submersible operating where it shouldn't have been, showing signs of mechanical problems. I believe it's the same vessel." The admission that she had detected something during the exercise, something that the official instruments had missed, hung in the air like an accusation. "You detected a vessel yesterday that our primary systems missed?" Blackstone's voice was dangerously quiet. "Yes, sir. I tried to report it, but you were overruled because the instruments showed nothing," Blackstone finished. His expression was unreadable. Another burst of static came through the communication system. "Deep Explorer to any vessel. Hull integrity failing. We have children on board. Please." The transmission cut to static. "Sir," Miranda said urgently, "they don't have much time. I can guide us to them, but we need to move now." Blackstone looked at her for a long moment, then at Hawthorne, who was still struggling to get a clear reading on his instruments. "Coleman, you have 50 lives riding on your ears. Are you absolutely certain you can find them?" Miranda thought of all the times she'd been dismissed, all the jokes about her too sensitive hearing, all the moments when she'd been right but nobody had listened. "Yes, sir, I can find them." The USS Blackwater moved through the dark ocean like a predator stalking prey, but this time they were hunting to save lives rather than take them. Miranda sat at her sonar station with complete focus, her exceptional hearing the only thing standing between 50 people and death. Bearing steady on 271 degrees, she reported, her voice calm despite the pressure. "Range now 6 nautical miles and closing." Captain Blackstone stood behind her, his earlier skepticism replaced by grim determination. Around them, the submarine's crew worked with quiet efficiency, but everyone understood the stakes. "How much time do they have?" Blackstone asked. Miranda listened intently to the sounds coming from the distressed submersible. She could hear the labored breathing of the occupants, the failing life support systems, the subtle changes in hull stress that indicated catastrophic failure was imminent. Based on their oxygen consumption rate and the sound of their CO2 scrubbers, maybe 20 minutes, she replied. "But sir, their hull is compromising. I can hear microfractures developing in the pressure vessel." Commander Hawthorne, still manning the primary sonar array, shook his head in frustration. "I'm still not getting a clear contact. Whatever's causing the acoustic interference is affecting our instruments." "What kind of interference?" Blackstone asked. Miranda had been wondering the same thing. "Sir, it's not natural interference. Something is actively masking their acoustic signature." She adjusted her headphones and concentrated deeper. Beneath the sounds of the dying submersible, she could detect something else. A pattern of sounds that suggested deliberate acoustic camouflage. "Captain," she said slowly, "I think the Deep Explorer is carrying some kind of experimental acoustic dampening system. That's why our instruments can't detect them clearly and why they've been operating in restricted waters." "Are you telling me this is some kind of classified research vessel?" Blackstone's voice carried a note of concern that went beyond the immediate rescue situation. "It would explain why they were in this area," Miranda replied, "and why their distress call mentioned 50 souls instead of giving specific passenger and crew numbers." Another transmission crackled through the communication system, weaker than before. "Deep Explorer. Hull fractures spreading. Losing pressure in Section 3. If anyone can hear this." The transmission died in static. "Range 4 nautical miles," Miranda reported. "I can hear individual voices now. There are definitely children on board." The mention of children sent a chill through the control room. Whatever classified research the Deep Explorer had been conducting, innocent lives were at stake. "Can you get us close enough for a rescue?" Blackstone asked. Miranda listened carefully to the acoustic environment around the distressed vessel. "Sir, they're resting on an underwater shelf at 420 feet. but there's a thermal layer causing acoustic distortion. Our instruments won't be able to maintain contact once we get close. But you can? Miranda met his gaze with confidence she'd never been allowed to show before. Yes, sir, I can guide us in manually. Lieutenant Cole Bennett, who had been quietly observing from a nearby station, spoke up. Sir, manual navigation at that depth, in acoustic distortion conditions. It's extremely dangerous. If we lose contact with the surface. We're not losing anyone today, Lieutenant, Blackstone said firmly. Coleman, take us in. What happened in the next 15 minutes would become legend in submarine rescue operations. Using only her extraordinary hearing, Miranda guided the USS Blackwater through a complex underwater approach that defied every standard protocol. She navigated by sound alone, interpreting acoustic reflections from the ocean floor, thermal layer distortions, and the increasingly desperate sounds from the deep explorer. Bearing 270 degrees, down 15 degrees, she called out navigation instructions that seemed to come from instinct rather than instruments. There's a rock formation 200 meters ahead. We need to go around it to starboard. Commander Hawthorne's instruments showed empty water, but the submarine maneuvered according to Miranda's guidance. When they cleared the invisible obstacle exactly as she had predicted, even he began to look at her with new respect. Range 800 meters, Miranda announced. I can hear their hull creaking under pressure. We're running out of time. Through the communication system came the weakest transmission yet. This is Deep Explorer. To our families, we tried. Not today, Miranda said firmly. She keyed the submarine's external communication array. Deep Explorer, this is USS Blackwater. We have you on acoustic contact. Hold on, we're coming. The response was immediate and filled with desperate hope. Blackwater, thank God. We have 47 survivors, including 12 children. Our hull is failing and oxygen is critical. Miranda's exceptional hearing caught something in the background of their transmission, a sound that made her blood run cold. Captain, she said urgently, their pressure hull is about to suffer catastrophic failure. We have maybe 3 minutes. Options? Blackstone demanded. Miranda closed her eyes and listened to the acoustic signature of both vessels. The Blackwater was a nuclear submarine designed for warfare, not rescue operations. The Deep Explorer was a civilian research vessel trapped at a depth that made traditional rescue impossible. But there was one possibility. Sir, if we can position ourselves directly above them and create a pressure lock with our emergency airlocks, we might be able to transfer their survivors to our vessel. That maneuver has never been attempted at this depth, Hawthorne protested. It's never been attempted by someone who can hear pressure differentials, Miranda replied. I can monitor the hull stress of both vessels and maintain the connection long enough for evacuation. Blackstone made the decision that would save 50 lives. Do it. The next 5 minutes required precision that existed at the very edge of human capability. Miranda guided the USS Blackwater into position above the Deep Explorer, using acoustic feedback to align their emergency airlocks with millimeter precision. She could hear the stress patterns in both hulls, the changing pressure dynamics, and the increasingly desperate sounds from the trapped civilians. Pressure differential equalizing, she reported, as the submarines made contact. Both hulls are holding, but we need to move fast. The evacuation began immediately. 47 survivors, scientists, researchers, and their families were transferred from the dying Deep Explorer to the safety of the Blackwater. Miranda monitored every sound, adjusting their position to maintain the delicate connection between the vessels. 12 children evacuated, came the report from the airlock. 20 adults transferred, 15 more to go. But Miranda could hear what the others couldn't. The Deep Explorer's hull was reaching the absolute limit of its structural integrity. We need to disconnect, she announced. Their pressure vessel is about to implode. There are still 15 people over there, Bennett protested. Not if we don't move now, Miranda replied firmly. Captain, we have to break connection immediately. Blackstone trusted her judgment. Emergency separation! All hands brace for emergency dive. The USS Blackwater separated from the Deep Explorer, just as the research vessel's hull finally surrendered to the crushing pressure of the deep ocean. The implosion was brief and violent, but all 47 survivors were safely aboard the military submarine. In the sudden quiet that followed, Miranda removed her headphones and sat back in her chair. Around her, the crew processed what they had just witnessed, a rescue that should have been impossible, guided by nothing more than one woman's extraordinary hearing. The journey back to port was quiet, but the atmosphere aboard the USS Blackwater had fundamentally changed. The woman who had been the joke of the submarine was now the reason 47 people were alive. Captain Blackstone found Miranda in the mess hall the next morning, sitting alone as usual, but this time her solitude was respectful rather than dismissive. "Lieutenant Coleman," he said, taking a seat across from her, "I owe you an apology." Miranda looked up from her coffee. "Sir? Yesterday I nearly dismissed your report about acoustic contacts in Sector 7. If I had listened to you then, we might have prevented the Deep Explorer's crisis entirely. We saved them, sir. That's what matters." Blackstone studied her for a moment. "How did you know? How did you hear what our instruments couldn't detect?" Miranda considered the question carefully. "Sir, the instruments are designed to interpret sounds according to programmed parameters. They filter out anything that doesn't match expected patterns. But sometimes the most important information comes from the sounds that don't fit the pattern." "And you can hear those sounds?" "I can hear everything, sir. The question is knowing which sounds matter." Commander Hawthorne approached their table, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine respect. "Coleman, I wanted to apologize for yesterday, and for the past 6 months." Miranda nodded acknowledgement. "We all did our jobs, Commander." "No," Hawthorne said firmly. "You did something extraordinary. I've been running sonar for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did yesterday." Word of the rescue spread quickly through the naval community. Miranda's exceptional hearing abilities, once considered a liability, were now recognized as a strategic asset. She received commendations from senior naval officers and was quietly recruited for specialized acoustic warfare training. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. 2 weeks after the rescue, Miranda received a letter that had been forwarded through official naval channels. The return address showed it was from Dr. Sarah Chen, Marine Research Institute. "Dear Lieutenant Coleman," the letter began, "I was the principal investigator aboard the Deep Explorer when you saved our lives. I wanted you to know that your actions rescued not just 47 people, but potentially saved years of critical oceanographic research. Our submersible was testing new acoustic camouflage technology designed to allow researchers to observe marine life without disturbing natural behaviors. The irony is that the same technology that made us invisible to conventional sonar nearly caused our deaths when we experienced mechanical failure. But you heard us anyway. Somehow, your exceptional abilities cut through our technological camouflage to detect our distress. My 12-year-old daughter was among those you saved, and she has asked me to tell you that she wants to study acoustics when she grows up, just like her hero. You have redefined what's possible in underwater rescue operations. Thank you for proving that human intuition and natural ability can accomplish what technology cannot." Miranda read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in her personal file. It would remain there as a reminder of the day she stopped being the submarine's joke and became its guardian angel. 6 months later, Lieutenant Miranda Coleman stood before a class of naval acoustic specialists at the submarine school in Groton, Connecticut. Her exceptional hearing abilities had become the subject of intensive study, and she had been assigned to develop new training protocols that combined technological capabilities with human acoustic intuition. "Traditional sonar relies on electronic interpretation of sound waves," she explained to the assembled students. "But electronic interpretation has limitations. It can only recognize patterns it has been programmed to identify." She gestured to the sophisticated sonar equipment that filled the classroom. "These instruments are incredibly powerful tools, but they are still just tools. The most advanced acoustic detection system ever created is still the human ear, properly trained and applied." A young ensign raised his hand. "Ma'am, how do we develop that kind of hearing ability?" Miranda smiled. "You start by listening to what everyone else dismisses as unimportant, the sounds that don't fit the pattern, the acoustic signatures that seem wrong or out of place. Most of the time, those anomalies are nothing. But sometimes, there are 47 people waiting to be rescued." The class took notes diligently, but Miranda knew that exceptional hearing couldn't be taught from a textbook. It required patience, practice, and the willingness to trust your instincts, even when the instruments disagreed. After class, she walked along the submarine piers, where the next generation of underwater vessels prepared for deployment. Each one carried sophisticated acoustic equipment worth millions of dollars, but she knew that the most valuable detection system aboard any submarine was still the person listening to the sounds. The woman who had once been mocked for being too sensitive had proven that sensitivity was not weakness but strength, that hearing what others couldn't wasn't a liability but a gift. And in the silent depths of the ocean, where lives hung in the balance and seconds determined survival, that gift had made all the difference. This story was brought to you by Quiet Tales Studio. Have you ever been dismissed for a quality that later became your greatest strength? Share your story in the comments below, and let us know what city you're watching from today. If stories of hidden heroes and unexpected courage inspire you, hit that subscribe button and help us continue sharing tales that prove strength comes in many forms. These stories matter, and with your support, we can ensure they're heard. Remember that sometimes the qualities others see as weaknesses are actually your greatest gifts waiting to be recognized. And when the moment comes to prove yourself, trust in the abilities that make you unique. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.